Tell me a little bit. I've seen the trailer and I've read a little bit on the website, but tell me what The Stamp Thief is about.
Dan, you
Here.
want to go?
Nope,
Oh,
all you,
okay.
babe.
The Stamp Thief is about a crazy person from Los Angeles who unfortunately happens to be me, who heard a story a number of years ago about a Nazi officer who was a stamp collector who somehow had access to stamps from Jews who were on their way to Auschwitz. And instead of taking the stamps and sending them off to Hitler, and so Hitler would have the best stamp collection and best furniture and the best art collection. This stamp collector decided to keep some or most of the good stamps for himself because he was, after all, a collector. And as the story goes, he took the stamps, and when the Soviets entered the war into what at that point was Germany, he took his collection of mostly stolen stamps, buried them in the basement of the building with the intent of going back and enjoying his stamps. But unfortunately, Germany lost the war, and the neighborhood where he lived in became part of Poland. He could not, and actually became a Soviet military base. So there was no way to get back. So I heard the story, it had been decades, and there was the possibility that one of the world's greatest stamp collections, buried in a basement in what is now Poland, might still be there. And there might be still collectors who are alive and the heirs of these people. And I said, I need to go back and see if it's still there. I need to try to find those stamps, try to find the families that own them, and hopefully return maybe just one stamp, in honor of the 6 million people who couldn't come with me to go search for these stamps.
That kind of leads
That was the
into
beginning.
why. When you heard this story, why did you think it was so important to find this collection? And then, as you said, even if you could just return it to one person.
It, I think it's because the Holocaust is such a horrific moment in our history, and you kind of wish you could go back and make it not happen. And I said, well, I can't do that, but what I can do is maybe have a tiny bit of justice. I might be able to just touch one thing in it to sort of, so number one, we won't forget what happened by talking about it. And number two, the least I could do is make the effort to again find something to return to someone more symbolic than real. I was not going to find every stamp that was stolen, nor other people still alive, but it was just more the concept of going there, doing something. And instead of staying home, when I heard the story, I said I could do nothing, or I can go try to find it and return it. And at that point, it was a pretty simple. I need to go for it.
And Dan, Gary says this was pretty simple. From the looks of the documentary, this was anything but simple. How do you tell a story, first about the stamps, but then also about the journey to retrieve these stamps?
Well, I think one of the more interesting things about the film is that basically Gary identified a location where he was pretty confident the stamps were buried, in the basement of a specific apartment building in a specific town in kind of a random part of Poland. And we traveled there, and ultimately, in order to get into the basement and be left alone to try to find these potentially multi-million dollar, this multi-million dollar box of stamps, we ended up doing a fake movie shoot. And so Gary made up a story about how his parents had this very forbidden romance and had
Grandparents, yeah.
grandparents, and had met and then exchanged a secret kiss in a basement, which turned out to be the basement that we wanted to access. So we were able to actually, through the ruse of having a fake film shoot, ended up being able to access this basement and search.
It sounds familiar, and you guys even tackle this head on. This is the plot of Argo, in a sense, which viewers responded to very well. Audiences loved it. It won Best Picture. Do you think that format lends itself to the drama and the kind of suspense of, aside from just the search, are they going to get caught? Are they going to be found out? Does that make this movie a little more entertaining?
We certainly hope so.
When I had the idea, it was not, because of a film. I wasn't saying let's go and make a fake shoot just so we could film it to be interesting. The idea of the fake shoot was saying, how can myself and a number of my friends show up with shovels in a basement in Poland and not get caught? What can I say to the people in that building? We talk about it in the film. Can I just knock on the door and say, can I come in? I'm an American. I'm a Jew from Los Angeles, in a country where anti-Semitism is often prevalent. And can I just knock on your door, come into your basement, look for something worth potentially millions of dollars that I can't keep and you can't keep, and something that also your government thinks they own because of the Polish law? So I'd be asking, 15 Polish families to come on my side and lie for me against their country. And I didn't think that was going to happen. So at first I thought maybe I'd go buy the building the easy way, but we couldn't do that because it was attached to other buildings in the way. And then we said maybe we'll become exterminators. We were trying to figure out how to get in. The only way to get in to me and spend a few days was to create a story where we would be allowed to be there. And that's when I wrote the story about my grandparents and their illicit kiss and their meeting. And it was it wasn't based on Argo, but certainly I knew that Argo was a way to do something, a way to get it done.
Certainly. I don't want to give away the ending. I don't even know the ending. I won't ask you guys to tell what wound up happening. But how thrilling was it for you to go on this search, or both of you, to go on this search and try and get this little piece of history back?
I'll say, for whatever it's worth, I mean, what we were trying to do was rescue artifacts of the Holocaust. And I know you're going to be speaking to Sandy later, and Holocaust history, knowledge of the Holocaust is diminishing. And I think that one of the ways that people are trying to teach history is by rescuing artifacts and creating some sort of physical connection. Because there are people who deny that anything actually happened. And so for us, it was really trying to recover this artifact that might further reinforce that this thing happened, and there's a legacy that people should know about.
This is not the kind of thing that Comic-Con is known for. These types of movies aren't the big pop culture tentpole movies. How did you guys wind up getting a screening and a panel at Comic-Con this year for this movie?
Well, her name is Sandy, and she has passion, and she saw our film, and she realized that she could somehow connect our film to her passion and bring us there. The stamps are, as you'll see, if you are lucky enough to get into the room for the presentation, it is art. It is visual. There's art. It's the stamps from different countries, and you could see images of Hitler and how they've changed, images of Holocaust camps, and it is, it combines the visual arts of, from comic book style up until world history. So Sandy pitched it, brought us along, and somebody said yes, and here we are.
I think there is a long history of pop art, of graphic novels telling the story of the Holocaust, and so I think we are within that scope of trying to popularize, trying to make accessible for audiences a story that's pretty grim, but also incredibly compelling.
Do you think this is a good way? As you mentioned, there aren't that many first-person accounts of the Holocaust anymore. There aren't that many ways that the Holocaust is being taught. Do you think this becomes another way to expand the audience, get this information in front of more people, and really hammer home what happened during World War II?
Yeah,
we certainly hope so. Yeah.
What's interesting is when we made the film, we didn't set out to create something entertaining. We went on a search, and we went to see what we could find, and because of who we are and because of the situation and because of some of our lack of experience, it became comedic in a way, and my relationship with Dan became comedic. So the film itself became something we didn't expect. It became an entertaining, that's the word people use when they see it, an entertaining Holocaust film. And that itself makes it way more accessible than so many of the other films. Not on purpose, but that's where we ended up, and that's why we think it's so successful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we made a film that we think is essentially a heist movie, but it's about history.
You're also doing a screening at a synagogue here in San Diego for people who do not have badges and can't get into a Comic-Con panel. How important is that for you as filmmakers to find other venues and make this as accessible as possible to everyone? As looking at the schedule, you guys are doing film festivals and screenings at all sorts of places over the course of this year and next.
We have definitely screened the film in many, many places. We're trying to expand our footprint as wide as possible. That said, Comic-Con is probably the strangest venue we've appeared at, over the past year of getting the film out into the world.
Anything either of you would like to share about this Comic-Con experience or the film that we haven't touched on that you guys think is important for people to know?
I think it is. I think people should not be turned off by the first view of, oh, wait a second, this is a Holocaust film, because as they'll find out, I've just said before, it became an entertaining experience, for the audience because of how we told the story, because of who we are, but at no point did we ignore the fact that this is a film about the Holocaust. It's a film about anti-Semitism. It's a film about current anti-Semitism. So it is really apropos, these days, especially for younger audiences at Comic-Con, for them to hear a story about the Holocaust in a way that I think they'd be able to sit for 90 minutes without grabbing their phones.
Gary Gilbert, Dan Sturman, the film is The Stamp Thief.